Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes show, season 3. So glad to be here. I have a very special guest with me today. For those who do not know me, my name is Bolaabimbolaauthor. I'm your host, frequency alchemist, spiritual teacher, and the author of Daily Soul Bytes book. And Daily Soul Bytes show really looks at featuring expert authors, coaches, and interpreters from the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership to share their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very, very special guest, Vanessa Nixon. Welcome to the show, Vanessa.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm really delighted to be having this conversation with you today.
Oh, this is wonderful, Vanessa. I actually saw you because I was interviewed by Jessica Vital, and I saw you on one of her episodes, on one of her interviews. So I thought, no, I would want to feature your expertise on Daily Soul Bites show. So thank you for honoring my invite. I would like to read a bit of your bio. Before we start, let me read a bit about you. Vanessa Nixon is a traditional naturopath and an author of the book Menopause. She's passionate about helping women thrive during the spiritual initiation of their menopausal journey through the gifts of nature, invigorating dance, and therapeutic movement, and teaching them to see their innate natural beauty. I love that. Menopause is such an important phase in our lives, in the lives of all women. And really, there is something that I heard when I was listening to Vanessa, and I did feel that I do want to share this information in terms of the stages of menopause and how we can be empowered. It's a phase that we can either allow to push us forward into the next initiations of our lives, or it's a phase that can pull us back. It's a very powerful period in a woman's life. And I really wanted Vanessa to talk about this. But first question, Vanessa, how did you come to this place? What has led you to a place where you must have been through a very significant shift, that made you experience such a significant amount of modalities that you're now sharing? Because some of the expertise that you're now sharing must have taken you through something. And I would love to hear what led you to that place where you are now an expert in menopause.
Well, thank you so much for that question. And I love answering this question because I think that when I share this, so many women resonate because we all go through these major transformations, these periods of initiation that lead us to our passions and the things that we really, really feel we can offer to the world, our gifts and our talents. And so for me, there were two major periods of my life that brought me to this place. The first one was when I was a young woman and I had been chronically ill for many years throughout my teen years and my early 20s. And my mother had been a nurse. And so we were pretty deeply entrenched in the conventional medical model. And so I had been going to doctors and been put on antibiotics. And I was at this point in my early 20s where I had been prescribed daily, ongoing antibiotics, ongoingly. And my health was getting worse and worse and worse. And I, at that time, didn't know that there were any other options. I was raised that, you go to the doctor, you do what they say, and that's it. That's your option. And one day, a friend of mine noticed that I was taking antibiotics every day and asked why. And so I told them the story of this chronic illness that I'd had at that point for 6 or 7 years. And my friend asked me a question that nobody had ever asked me up to that point. And that was the simple question, is it helping? Just that simple question, is it helping? Nobody had asked me that before, and I had never asked myself that. And when I stopped to think about it, I realized no, it wasn't helping. In fact, my health was getting worse and worse and worse. And that simple question, which caused me to pause, allowed my mind to just expand with curiosity. Now that I realized this wasn't helping me, I began to think, well, is there something else that might help me? Maybe there are other options. And my friend said, oh, I go to see an herbalist when I'm feeling ill, and I could take you if you'd like. And so I went to see the herbalist. She gave me a simple formula of respiratory herbs. And what had previously taken me 8 weeks every time I fell ill to recuperate, this time taking the herbs, I was well in 2 weeks. And that had never happened before. It just blew my mind. I was hooked. At that point, it was like, wow, this is not only an option I had never heard of. I didn't know herbalism even existed at that time. And it works better than what I've been trying. And it just felt good in my body. It felt like my body was responding in a way it never had before. So I wanted to learn everything I could about herbal medicine. And so I started studying with a local teacher. I read all the books that I could find. And then that led me to studying nutrition, and that led me to studying homeopathy and many other modalities. And then much later, I went back to school and finished up my degree in traditional naturopathy. So that was the beginning of my journey into natural health and, this really powerful feeling of knowing that I could heal myself, that I had the wisdom within me, and I also had the ability to reach out and use resources, and I could heal myself. That was so empowering for me. And then after, 3 decades of really using all of these skills and tools and techniques that I had learned over the years to elevate my health to a really optimal level, then I came up to perimenopause. And even with all of my knowledge and skills and expertise, when I got there, I didn't realize I was in it. That's how hidden, how taboo, how underground we have kind of forced this phase of life for women to be, because we don't talk about it. And so it took me a number of months while my body was starting to change and I was experiencing mood swings and emotional outbursts that just were not normal for me. And my periods were changing. They had been very regular all my life, and suddenly they were either really long or really short or really heavy. And there was just a lot of variation in my menstrual cycles. And it took me a while to just stop. And again, I had to take that pause and stop and allow myself to go within and access my own wisdom and say, what is happening? What is my body trying to tell me? What are these messages that my body is giving me? What are they trying to say? And then, of course, I realized, oh, in perimenopause, of course, I know this. I know these things. But even experts, when you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to pull back and look at it objectively. So, if I even have, a challenging time going through these with all the tools and all the expertise I have, I just imagined, what is it like for women who don't have these tools, who haven't spent 30 years studying all of these various natural modalities? And so I started talking to women. I started bringing up the subject, and it really hit me how taboo it really has been. most of the women, if not all of the women that I spoke to, said that nobody had ever talked to them about the menopausal journey. They didn't even know what perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause were. They didn't know there were different phases. And they had no idea what the signs would be. They had no ideas what symptoms could possibly occur or what to do about them. And as I continued these conversations, I realized that really what helped me through this period the most, what was that real turning point in helping me to what you very eloquently described as making the decision to take the opportunity that menopause provides for us and make this the best chapter of my life. The turning point for that was taking that pause again, leaning back into that innate wisdom that I believe we all have, and reaching out for support. When I realized that all of the struggles that I was going through at that time, not only with my body, with perimenopause, with the hormonal changes, but all of the external things that were going on in my life at the same time, I ended up getting a divorce after almost 20 years of marriage. My children were leaving the nest, going out on their own. I moved to a new town, bought a house on my own for the first time in my life, restarted my career, and then later started dating as a menopausal woman for the first time in 25 years. And so all of these things were happening at the same time that I was moving through the menopausal journey. And it was intense. And I realized that I had cultivated this really supportive community of women over the years. And when I allowed myself to lean back in that support, to allow them to support me, that's really when everything changed for me, when everything clicked, when I realized this is, as women, this is what we are wired for. We are wired for community. We are wired for support, and not just giving support, which is what most of us are used to, but receiving support as well. And so I took the opportunity to then refocus my career on supporting women through this period, because as you said, it is an initiation. It's an intense, sometimes fiery initiation. And that initiation brings us into what I feel is the most potent, powerful phase of a woman's life, when she has all of these decades of experience and wisdom, that she now has the maturity to bring out into the world, to bring her gifts, her talents, her dreams, and to bring them all to fruition, to not only help herself, her family, but her community, her friends, and the world at large.
I love that. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I think what I really caught from what you said is that moment when we make a decision, because it is such an intense time. I have been through it. I have been through those stages, not knowing what I was going through. It is a real game changer. It is a game changer. You either go up and you ride the waves, or it is a time when your life changes. And somehow something you said about that time when we are much older, when when we are really going through this perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause, when we're going through those stages, lots of things seem to be going on at the same time. It's a very interesting time. It's either the empty nesting, or you're either having to look at your finances, or you're leaving work. There are lots of changes in life that are happening at the same time, and it's really calling us to make a change. I think this is really key, getting to understand that we will not be doing things the same way we did them before. We are not the same person. That personality construct is different. That body consciousness is different. And we have to come to understand it in a different way. We have to take time to learn new ways to do it. And the resistance has to be acknowledged and seen and worked through, because there is resistance to gaining that knowledge. It's one thing to gain the knowledge and get the information, it's another thing to actually implement different habits, to set up different habits on a day to day. And this is why I think this is something that I do want to elaborate a lot more on this information. If you could take us through those those steps. So what are the kinds of things that we women can begin to look at when we are at that very early stage, and then when we get into menopause, and then post-menopause, which thankfully is where I am now. But even that is a journey. That is a journey, because those habits, the body is still adjusted. I don't know how many years it takes. I feel like I've been in 3, 5 years of menopause now, post-menopause, whatever you call it. I would love to know a bit more. This information is really critical, because the first we have to gain that information and understand it and release whatever resistance there is to learning about it. And then we can begin to understand and then form those new habits. So if you could take us through those steps, Vanessa, and what to expect in those three stages.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. I think also I agree. It's very important to have that information, which we haven't received, because our culture really does focus on youth and all of the things that go with youth, and that stage of reproduction. Mm-hmm. And I think the first thing that's really important for us to understand is that we are designed to go through the stages. Our bodies are not designed to grow up and then stay in that stage, which we call the reproductive stage. Our bodies are designed, and our hormonal systems are designed to reach certain levels so that we can reproduce if we choose to, and then to slowly decline in the menopausal phase, because that's where our hormones are supposed to be. We don't need to reproduce anymore. And so our bodies are supposed to change. As you said, we are supposed to change. This is a new phase of life. And so when we do hear about menopause, and the conversation is starting these days, we're starting to hear people talk about it more, but it's all directed toward how can we go through menopause staying the way we were before menopause? Really, it's like, how can we go backwards? It's all about anti-aging. It's all about staying young. And what I would love women to embrace is embrace the maturity and the wisdom and the natural progression that our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our souls, our lives go through, because there are so many gifts. This is such a rich phase of life. And we can't get to that if we're constantly trying to go back. And so as we enter our mid to late 30s, and definitely the 40s, but for some women, it's as early as the 30s, we transition into perimenopause. And that is the phase where we're still cycling. We still have a menstrual cycle, but our body is starting to change. Our hormones are starting to shift. And in a perfect world, in an ideal world where we all ate ideal food, really nutrient-dense nutrition, and we didn't have environmental toxins, endocrine disruptors, all of those things, that progression would be very smooth. And the hormonal shifts would be gradual, and the hormones would do what they're supposed to do in a very easeful way. And we probably wouldn't have very many symptoms. But life is not ideal. We don't all have access to, the highest quality foods and the and pure water and all of the things that we need to be optimally healthy. So many of us do experience some symptoms, and those might be changes in your cycle. It could be changes in your mood, anxiety, depression, or mood swings. A lot of women tell me that they experience rage for the first time in their lives, just like these emotional outbursts of anger that they've never experienced. It could be some brain fog, like your brain just feels kind of fuzzy all the time. It could be insomnia. It could be hot flashes. And so there are many there are about 35 symptoms that have been documented and identified, but I have heard that number go up to over 100 symptoms that women can experience along this journey. And so it can look very different for each woman. However, if you're really in tune with your body, which is the second step, is really listening to your body, then you'll notice these shifts. You'll start to notice that things are starting to feel different. And the things that you used to do that made your body feel really good or kept you feeling very healthy might not work the same way. Your body might not be responding the same way to exercise and nutrition, especially if you're someone who has counted on dieting. Like whenever you feel like, oh, I've gained a few pounds, let's just go on a restrictive diet for a couple of weeks, and that worked for you in the past, it probably won't work for you anymore. Or if you were a person who was really into hardcore fitness, and whenever you started to feel like, I haven't been paying enough attention to my health, I'll just put in a few extra runs this week. And then that used to work for you, that probably won't work for you anymore. It'll probably just be one more thing adding stress to your body. And that stress spikes cortisol, and cortisol affects all the other hormones. So the other hormones start getting more imbalanced. And so it'll probably cause more symptoms. And so many women find themselves in this cycle of trying to do the things that used to work. And then suddenly they're getting more symptoms. So then they try even harder. And then they get more symptoms and they try even harder. And it's just this spiral where they suddenly feel out of control. They don't even feel like they know their body anymore. And they're very confused because they don't know what's happening. And so that is a very common theme that I hear as women go through perimenopause and then finally get to menopause. Perimenopause for some women can last 10 years. For other women, it can be 6 months. So it's variable how long that period lasts. And then menopause is just 1 year. It's defined as 12 months of no longer having a menstrual cycle. So you actually don't really know when you're in it. You only know when you're at the end of it. And you can look back and say, oh, it's been 12 months since my last menstrual cycle. I was in menopause. Okay. And then from that point on, that's post-menopause. For the rest of our lives, we're in the period that is defined as post-menopause. However, our body does, as you mentioned, continue to change. And depending on our individual constitution and our situation and our health levels, that period of change can extend. It can be shorter. Again, every woman is unique. Every situation is unique. So every menopausal journey will be unique to that woman. But we all do have those 3 phases, unless a woman has been forced into medical menopause with something like a surgical hysterectomy. But naturally, every woman has these 3 phases that they go through. And so when you know that beforehand, you can really feel more empowered and confident in preparing yourself. When you have no idea what's happening, then it's so confusing to find yourself in the middle of all of these new feelings and with a body that doesn't seem to respond to you in the way that it used to. And so really talking about this with younger women, I think is really critical. Letting them know that this is what they have to look forward to. And when I say look forward to, I really mean look forward to, because yes, there can be some challenges, but those challenges are just like, I like to use the metaphor of the butterfly going into a chrysalis, and the metamorphosis of the caterpillar into the butterfly. You know, the caterpillar has this life it's used to, and every day is pretty much the same. You know, it knows what it's doing, and then suddenly things start changing and they feel this pull to start creating this cocoon around themselves. And we know now through studying this process scientifically that when caterpillars go into the chrysalis, their bodies turn to goo. Like their body dissolves, which I can imagine to the caterpillar is really scary or really strange or very intense. And it may not know what is happening, what is going on. It may feel like it's dying. However, it has to make that transformation in order for the cells of its body to transform into this amazing, beautiful butterfly that breaks out of the cocoon after that period of transformation. And so I really feel like that is the transformation that women go through in menopause. It can really feel like your life is ending. It can feel like I have no idea what I'm going to do now. I have no idea what's going on, what's happening in my life. And through and like any initiation, these challenges lead us to something that we may have never even imagined was possible for us before. If we take those opportunities, if we take the opportunity to look at this as a gift instead of a curse, if we are able to reframe what's happening and really embrace this period of potency, this period of wisdom, this period of this is a rebirth. I love the fact that in traditional Chinese medicine, they call menopause the second spring because they look at it as a rebirth. This is like a new spring for us. It's like we are birthing. This whole process of initiation is like, it's like a pregnancy. It's like we are gestating this new life, a new body, a new phase, a new chapter that we can now step into, and we can recreate it. We have a new life. We have a second spring. We have a rebirth, and we can take that opportunity and embrace it and make it what we want and be able to live out the dreams that we want to live in this new phase of life that we have been given.
And it's possible. Thank you, Vanessa. It is so possible. I do want to mention something around what you said at the very beginning about you going to see a doctor about this. Because that is, I think I do want to touch on that because that is the first place many of us go to. I remember my mother, when she started going through perimenopause, she made up her mind. This was way back, in the, I would say, the 90s. She said she wasn't going to try HRT. She was going to do herbs. And I remembered that. So, unlike a lot of women, I knew I wasn't going to go to HRT. Because I had a lot of advice about, you must go and see your doctor, but HRT is about the only option the medical field has. And we really have to come to a place where we are open to trying new ways. This is key because there is an empowerment that comes when we decide to do this. And it might be a new way of thinking, but the goal is for us to get back to that place where we feel truly grounded, feeling truly grounded, coming back to that place of 0 point, that place of centeredness, that place where we feel connected to our own self, to our hearts. Because somewhere along the line, we get to this place and we lose it. For some of us, we lose it for a few weeks, it may be a few months, it may be a few years, it may be a lot of years, but something happens at this point. And it's about being very aware that we can come back to what we had or move through it to come to a place where we're feeling much more grounded, much more centered. And what modalities we use as we go through those three stages, perimenopause to the menopause to the postmenopause, it's very different. We're all very unique. We'll feel different symptoms, but it is important. Once we begin to see those changes in our periods, once we begin to see those changes, we know something is happening. And we can begin to go within, and know that it is possible because fear kicks in. There's a lot of fear when we're stepping into the unknown, and we can really come to, and this is why I love, people like Vanessa Nixon, who is doing this, providing this service, providing this book. So I'd love to hear more about your book, The Metamorphosis, Vanessa, because this is something about providing the information for us to feel less fear, to claim our empowered being, and use the modalities that have worked scientifically, that have been proven to work for many. And we will try many different things, but it's about being open, being willing to change, knowing that we can push through this to come to a place of a new phase, a new empowered phase. So I'd love to hear more about your book, Vanessa, and if we could focus on those chapters that really talk about what is this empowered phase? What are we being initiated into? This is a natural cycle for us. It's not strange. It's not a strange cycle. It's just that we've not been prepared for it. And it's about how do we begin to hold that vision of empowerment, that vision of possibilities, of opportunities that really pull us through. Because it was me remembering how my mother was still quite, empowered into her 70s or 80s. She passed when she was 80, but she was very empowered, very empowered. And I would love to share that information of what lies at the end of that journey when we have passed through the awareness, the changes, we can come to a more grounded place. I'd love to hear more about your book and how you help others, how you help women to come to this place of newness, reclaiming, rebirth, place of rebirth.
Thank you for asking about it. And so, my book, I like to show it because it does have the image of the chrysalis and the woman transforming into this butterfly. And I think that if, like I said, reframing our ideas around menopause, it sounds so simple, but it's the critical piece that I think so many of us are missing. Mm. And I love that you are talking about options. And yes, hormone replacement therapy is the option that the conventional medical world has provided. And for some women, that may be the best option for them. However, for most of us, because as you said, it's a natural life stage. It's not a disease. It's not a state of illness. It is what we are meant to do, and our bodies know how to do it. So one of the keys is to listen to our bodies. And we haven't been taught how to listen to our bodies. And so going within, finding that place of groundedness that you spoke of. And one of the best tools that I have found that I talk about in my book to begin with is mindfulness. And whether that's in the form of meditation or visualization, whether it's using breath work, whether it's using practices of gratitude or being in the present moment, there are so many different practices, ways that we can be mindful throughout our days. And when we use mindfulness as a sacred practice that we bring into our days in small little rituals, when we ritualize these modalities, and really incorporate them into how we live, that's when we really see big transformation. So mindfulness, being in nature, tending your garden, taking care of a pet, all of these things. We can even use mindfulness with all of the daily chores that we have to do every day. Washing dishes can be a mindfulness practice. If we bring our focus to how the running water feels on our hands, how the soap suds feel to our fingers, the feel of the plate or the glass, what the water sounds like as it's running. All of these are really potent ways to meditate, to be mindful, to ground ourselves in the present moment. And what this is doing is it's regulating our nervous system. This has powerful physiological effects on our bodies. It allows us to be grounded, balanced, centered, and physically it regulates our nervous system, which helps our hormones to be in better balance. It helps to reduce our stress levels, and that reduces our cortisol. And when our cortisol is balanced, then that trickles down to the rest of our hormones, our reproductive hormones like progesterone and estrogen and testosterone and thyroid. All of those things are affected by cortisol. So stress reduction through all of these mindfulness practices is a really, really effective place to start and to incorporate daily throughout your day. It has, I can't say enough about it. It really can change your life. And then we also know that one of the other master hormones besides cortisol that really can affect how we move through the menopausal journey is insulin. And so insulin also can be regulated by the things I just suggested, all of these mindfulness practices. And also then we can start looking into nutrition. We can look into how have I been nurturing my body through what I take in, through foods, through beverages. And a lot of us have a lot of resistance in this area. We might even have shame in this area. We might have had a lifelong struggle with yo-yo dieting. And so this is a really empowering place for women when they can really look at not how can I diet, not what can I deprive myself of, but instead, how can I nourish myself? How can I nurture my body with really nutrient-dense, supportive foods and beverages? And when we make that shift into looking at food as something that really nurtures us and builds our body and gives us the energy and the strength that we need, we can start to break down that resistance. We can start to move through those blocks that may have been built up around food. And then the next thing that we easily can move into after we talk about food and how we nurture ourselves is how can we expand that through herbs, through all of the plants that nature has given us to help us to stay healthy and to get healthy and to heal when we're not healthy. And that opens up a whole new world of options. And there are so many herbs that are specific for the symptoms that we might be experiencing. There are so many herbs that can help us to balance our hormones and to reduce hot flashes, to help us feel more clear mentally and more full of energy. And I don't like to go into specific herbs because it really depends on the woman.
Yeah.
But I do like to talk about a classification of herbs called adaptogens. And adaptogens are herbs that have the ability to help our bodies adapt to stress and change, which is exactly what's happening with us during this phase of life. And it does that through the endocrine system, through balancing our hormones. So adaptogens are a really, really powerful tool for us, a natural, holistic way that we can start addressing symptoms. And again, they are specific to what each woman's situation is. And so I really encourage women to reach out for that support with someone who's knowledgeable. And then there are other modalities like homeopathy and flower essences and energy exercises that, again, help us to stay balanced, help us to stay grounded. And that is really the core of what is going to strengthen us and give us that ability to traverse these waters of menopause feeling very confident, feeling empowered, feeling strong in our bodies, feeling healthy. And, it used to be hundreds of years ago that women were the healers in their villages and communities. And some of that knowledge has gotten lost along the way, but I believe that we still have that ancestral knowledge within us. And so when we really work to keep ourselves grounded and open, and when we listen for the messages that come from our bodies and that come from our intuition, we hear that knowledge, we hear that inner wisdom. And it leads us to the right modality for us, or the right practitioner for us, or the right support that we need in the moment. And what I really want women to feel is empowered to make the best decision for them and not just do what they feel is the only option, but, open themselves to all of the many, many options that there are for us to help us to naturally rise to our power. This is something that ancient societies understood, was that this is the time of life that all women should be looking forward to. Mm-hmm. This is when we really stand in our power. And it's heartbreaking when I see women feel like they're broken when they get to this phase of life, and that they have no options, that their health is just declining, and that it's all over for them. Because it's exactly the opposite. It couldn't be more different than that. We have the ability to make this phase of life the most powerful and the most impactful in the world. I mean, this is when we can really make an impact and change the world in the way that we were meant to. And so I want to be part of supporting as many women to do that as possible.
Well, I love that. So do I, Vanessa. I also want to be part of that, because I remember feeling this what you said about this is a reproductive stage. And then for those who do choose, not every woman, chooses to have kids, and that's okay. and or needs to. That's okay. But there is that phase when our bodies can have children, and then there is another phase when it's very different for everybody. It's very unique, but that age changes for everybody. But there's that reproductive stage where we are giving, we're out there, we're nurturing. We are not really looking within. We're so busy. It's a different cycle. It's still part of our natural cycle, but it's a different phase. That change in the body consciousness, that perimenopause, this is really when it starts, the perimenopause, when the periods become infrequent, when we begin to get the flashes. We may not know what's happening, but we are being called. This is the cycle. The time has come for us to go within. The time has come for us to know our own self even more. That know thyself. If we haven't known ourselves in the reproductive stage, we cannot get away with not doing it in this stage. The body will call us. And the more we resist, the more the body will actually go into another different kind of phase downwards, downhill. And this is the same for every woman. It's just that different symptoms come up. But this cycle, it's an initiation in many cultures. It's an initiation into coming to a place of pause, a place of understanding self, a place of self-compassion, a place of mindfulness. I love what you said, Vanessa, about mindfulness, because that takes awareness. Before we can know what the mindfulness of the thoughts, the sensations, the feelings that we have within us, what makes me who I am? I may be consciousness, expressing myself in a personality construct called Bola and so many other things. But coming to know that body, coming to know the subconscious a lot more, because that subconscious is going to now come to the surface. And it's asking us to come to know who I am a bit more. And those rituals, those habits we're forming, they have to be rewired. They're actually rewiring our body and our nervous system. And we can come to a place where we practice those habits to the point where they become subconscious. We become empowered with them because they begin to drive our lives, our day-to-day, from that subconscious place, which is the 95% of what drives us anyway on a day-to-day. But the rewiring that takes place in the perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause phase is phenomenal. Phenomenal. And I think I did want to just emphasize on that, on how it's a natural time for us to go within to really get to know that body consciousness. And I love that you've got a book on it. Menomorphosis. It's really a morphosis. It's almost like the body's dissolving. It's amazing what happens in this time. But for some reason, it's been documented as something negative. But it's about how we approach it. And I love that you are doing this. And I wanted to know a bit more about your courses, how, where people can find you. That would be really helpful for those who may want to reach out to you today.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share that. One really exciting thing that I wanted to mention is that I have a companion book coming out this fall that goes along with my first book, Metamorphosis, and it's like a workbook. It's called the Metamorphosis Playbook. And it helps people to work through the book in a way that is more fun, it's in a way that you can really go to those deep places and get to know yourself better and utilize all the information in the book in a really fun and spacious way. And so I'm really excited about that being another way that women can go through this work in a way that is fun. I keep calling it work, but it really, because, in initiation, there is a feeling of work or challenge, but it's also a period of joy. And so I really want women to be able to feel that joy as they go through it. And then I do work with women one-on-one. I love working with women in that kind of safe container where they know they have that one-to-one support. And so people can get a hold of me through my website, which is herbsofgracehealingarts.com. And all the information on the movement classes that I do, which are based in belly dance, because belly dance is a form of movement that was actually created for a woman's body to help her go through all of the different phases of life she goes through. And most women don't know that. But that's one of the reasons that I love belly dancing so much and why I teach it, because I see in all of my students the way they really can go within and get to know their bodies in a way that they never knew before through this form of movement. And I also have a line of natural cosmetics because, again, you know, finding that natural beauty, especially in our society that, you know, is really focused on beauty in a very youthful way. I think it's really important for women to have very healthy natural options to be able to show up in a way that they feel beautiful just being who they are. And then I do have my packages where I do one-to-one support, helping women to navigate all of the options and choices as they are going through the menopausal journey.
Oh, that is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today, Vanessa. I did enjoy having you here today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This was a wonderful conversation.
And I'd like to thank my audience for watching today and for joining us. Thank you so much for your support in season 2. We're now starting season 3, and I do want to ask those who haven't subscribed to subscribe to us so we can really begin to share more and more of what we are talking about, you know, to those who may be interested in this, those who may resonate. Your copy of the Daily Soul Bytes book, which is now available anywhere books are sold online, and to grab Vanessa's book, Menopause. It's also available anywhere books are sold. And I do want to invite you to join us next week for another episode of the Daily Soul Bytes show. Bye-bye.